Speaking of toxic white men and like what happens when you let them get a little bit of power, Tucker Carlson does not believe that white supremacy led to the attacks on Capitol Hill. Let's roll that clip of our dear friend Tucker Carlson, who so many leftist populists think is, their ally.
You can judge for yourself what happened last Wednesday in Washington. Rarely has an event been filmed from more angles than that was. You know what that was, and you also know what it wasn't. It was not an act of racism. It was not an insurrection. It wasn't an armed invasion by a brigade of dangerous white supremacists. It wasn't. Those are lies. What happened last week in Washington was not new or unusual. In fact, it was sadly familiar. The riot you saw was the perfect illustration of why we should oppose all mob action always. Left uncontrolled, mobs boil over. Violence erupts, people get killed. That is inevitable. That's what always happens. It has happened many times before, not just over the past year, but over the previous years and previous centuries, in fact, all through human history. That's the way mobs are. Wise leaders know that. That's why they don't encourage mobs. Let's hope that everyone in Washington has learned that lesson.
Okay, so if a mob all tends to believe one version of the same thing, whether it's their supreme leader won the election, or they wear Auschwitz shirts, or are chanting Hitler outside, or are organizing on white supremacy forums, what planet is he on? And what really is like strange to me is I feel like he got talking points because just last week he was trying to distance himself from Trump, and now he's saying it wasn't an insurrection. To what? Protect Trump from being convicted? What do you get out of this, Tucker? Esperanza, I saw your face. You were just like, ah!
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it is not at all surprising to me that a Fox News host could be completely out of touch with reality and out of touch with history, right? But we know that, this is nothing new to the history of our country. I mean, we started as a settler colonial project. And what that means is that it wasn't just the military's job to clear the land and wipe out the indigenous people. They required the cooperation of settlers who would enact violence, vigilante violence in the streets. But also I think something that we really need to understand is that the rhetoric that's going on right now is taking attention away from the ideology of these people, which is white supremacy, fascism, and it's putting the focus on the tactics of these people. And what's going to end up happening is it's going to come back to hurt the left, and we're going to be the ones that are going to face that repression in the future.
Hear, 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 hear. Kate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, just to your comment about why leftist populists like this guy, isn't he like the heir to the Campbell soup fortune or something? Like, he's just like a Fox News hack. He's not saying anything brave, in my opinion. Yeah, I definitely would agree with Esperanza's comments. And I also think, Tucker, he goes through all these things that it wasn't. And it's like, and what do you think it was? It's like looking at my cat and being like, well, it's not an animal. It's not furry. It's like, well, then how are you seeing this,
Well, I mean, he was a mob. Like the mob didn't have a perspective. Like the mob didn't have a place to organize. Like the mob walked in there like zombies. Like, where do you think? I mean, yes, it was a mob that had an ideology and they went there with a reason. It's I think Esperanza makes a good point, though. I've even seen this on the left where suddenly we get obsessed with tactics. And again, like we can have these big, deep conversations, which we have been for years, about things like censorship. Taking on big tech absolutely it was an immediate the way that big tech and their monopoly over this conversation and how they've been profiting off of hate and have as a result hate groups have reaped the benefit of their business model. That absolutely needs to be addressed immediately. Like having a theoretical college course conversation debate over censorship, which is of course an issue, and any sort of Patriot Act enhanced policies that might be brought to the table immediately, very important. But we have to also keep our eye on the ball, which is the less we are talking about white supremacy, the more Republicans can just go back into their cave and pretend that that didn't happen, not to mention neoliberals not being educated in just how bad this is. Just my take. Feel free to chime in, guys. You can. It's Friday.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you on all points.
Yeah. And, you know, one thing I also want to remind people is that let's not forget that, you know, a few months ago when BLM actions were popping up all over the country, Biden was calling for the criminalization of anarchists, right? So I think we will see how, you know, allying with the state against these, you know, fascist vigilantes is not the strategy I think we should be taking. You know, sort of in this idea of a three-way fight, I think we need to both see, you know, the capitalist state as our enemy, but also understand that, you know, this fascist upsurge of people, mostly middle class, small business owners, contractors, who feel like the entitlements of white supremacy are no longer theirs to take, you know, they're going to continue enacting the street violence, just like they did in Los Angeles when they viciously attacked a Black woman who was not even involved in any political, you know, protest at that moment.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.